In the early hours of August 31, 1997, Princess Diana and her boyfriend, Dodi Fayed, were in Paris trying to enjoy a quiet night. But as paparazzi swarmed them, things took a tragic turn. While driving through the city with their chauffeur and bodyguard, their car lost control in a tunnel, crashing into a support pillar before flipping and coming to a stop. Dodi and the driver died instantly, while Diana was left clinging to life. Doctors worked desperately to save her, but by 5 a.m., the world had lost the people's princess. Earlier that evening, Diana and Dodi had flown into Paris on a private jet owned by Dodi's father. They stayed in a fancy 2,000 a night suite at the Ritz, also owned by the Fayed family. The couple had a romantic dinner at the hotel restaurant, looking completely smitten with each other. But the night took a stressful turn when they were told nearly 30 photographers were outside, waiting to catch a glimpse of them. Hoping to escape the frenzy, they decided to head to Dodi's apartment near the Champs-Élysées. They used 3 decoy cars to throw off the paparazzi, but some photographers stuck around, determined to follow them. Eventually, Diana and Dodi got into a car driven by Henry Paul, the Ritz's security head, with bodyguard Trevor Rees-Jones. Paparazzi immediately gave chase, trying to shake them off. Henry Paul, later found to be over the legal alcohol limit, sped up to a dangerous 121 miles per hour. But as they entered a tunnel along the Seine River, the car lost control, crashing horrifically. The sound of the car horn echoing in the tunnel was all that remained of the chaos. Dodi and Henry Paul died on the spot, while Diana was barely alive. Paramedics rushed her to Petit-Salpêtrière Hospital, where doctors fought to save her with CPR and electric shocks. Sadly, her injuries were too severe. Despite their best efforts, they had to call time of death. Trevor Rees-Jones, the only one wearing a seatbelt, was the sole survivor, though he suffered serious injuries. The crash and Diana's death shook the world, leaving behind questions, grief, and the memory of a woman who changed the way people viewed royalty. The shocking and violent nature of Diana's death, along with its timing, so soon after her divorce and departure from royal life, ignited countless conspiracy theories. One of the most talked about claims was that Diana was pregnant at the time. Mohammed Al Fayed, Dodi's father, told investigators that Diana had confided in him about the pregnancy. He said she hadn't gone public because she believed King Charles and Prince Philip wanted her out of the picture. Diana allegedly feared they were worried that a future royal grandchild with a non-white Muslim father could cause a public uproar. This fueled speculation that Diana's death wasn't an accident but a deliberate act. Adding to the intrigue, stories emerged suggesting Diana herself had long suspected she might die in a car crash. Paul Burrell, her former butler, shared details in his 2003 memoir A Royal Duty. He revealed that Diana had written him a letter in 1995 expressing fears that someone close to her powerful ex-husband might harm her or stage a car accident to pave the way for Charles to remarry. Royal reporter Ingrid Seward backed up Burrell's claims, recalling a conversation in June 1997, just 2 months before the crash, where Diana admitted she was scared Charles might have her killed in a staged car accident. Both Burrell and Seward also claimed Diana believed her apartment was bugged and worried someone might tamper with her car's brakes. These fears led her to think an attack might come from someone within her inner circle. After Burrell publicly shared Diana's letter, the royal family faced mounting scrutiny. King Charles himself became a focus of concern. In 2005, during a thorough investigation into Diana's death, Lord Stevens, the former Commissioner of London's Metropolitan Police, interviewed Charles to address the claims and suspicions swirling around the tragedy. Diana's infamous note didn't just accuse Charles of plotting her death, it also hinted at his motivation. She believed he wanted her out of the way so he could marry Tiggy Ledberg, one of his son's former nannies. As for Camilla Parker Bowles, with whom Charles had a long-standing affair and later married in 2005, Diana reportedly saw her as a decoy. "Camilla is nothing but a distraction," she allegedly wrote. "We are being used by this man in every sense of the word." Less than a year after Diana's tragic death in Paris, French authorities launched a formal investigation. Leading the inquiry was Judge Hervé Stephan, who interviewed Richard Tomlinson, a former MI6 agent. Tomlinson dropped some shocking claims, alleging that MI6 had planned an assassination in Paris the same night Diana died. He also suggested that Henry Paul, the Ritz Hotel's deputy head of security and driver in the fatal crash, was secretly working for MI6. To add more intrigue, Tomlinson hinted that one of Diana's bodyguards might have been a spy as well. If true, it painted a chilling picture. Several people in Diana's inner circle could have had connections to organizations that didn't have her best interests at heart or, worse, might have played a role in her death. One of the most controversial theories isn't about the crash itself but what happened afterward. Conspiracy theorists argue that Diana's death might have been caused by delays in medical care. According to USA Today, while Dodi Fayed and Henri Paul died on the scene, Diana was still alive when paramedics rushed her to Piti-Salpêtrière Hospital. However, it took over 2 hours to get her there. By 5 a.m., she was pronounced dead. This timeline has raised eyebrows. Critics point to ambulance driver Michel M., who reportedly bypassed a closer hospital, Hotel Dieu, to take Diana to Piti-Salpêtrière. In 2007, Maspo explained during the investigation that he was instructed to head to Piti-Salpêtrière but to wait until Diana's condition was stable before making the trip. This decision remains highly suspicious and adds fuel to the theories that Diana's death was no accident. In the aftermath of Princess Diana's tragic death, the circumstances surrounding her final moments have sparked endless questions and mysteries. One detail that stands out is how she was treated at the scene. French emergency protocol at the time required doctors to stabilize her on site, so a doctor worked on her for 40 minutes before she was taken on a slow journey to the hospital. But perhaps the most puzzling part of the tragedy is the mysterious connection to a French photographer named James Ananson. Mohamed Al-Fayed has long claimed that a white Fiat Uno played a key role in the crash that killed Diana and his son, Dodi. This Fiat was allegedly owned by Ananson, leading Al-Fayed to believe the photographer was involved in the events of that night. Al-Fayed even suggested that Ananson had plans to reveal explosive information about the crash. However, Ananson never got the chance. In 2000, his charred body was discovered in a burning BMW in a remote forest in southern France. Investigators found him slumped over the steering wheel with a large hole in the side of his head, which some believe looked like a gunshot wound. Authorities ruled his death a suicide, claiming the hole was caused by intense heat from the fire, but Al-Fayed and others have suggested that Ananson was silenced by powerful operatives to keep him from sharing what he knew. Friends of Ananson claimed he had privately admitted to following Diana's car into the Alma tunnel that fateful night, even snapping photos he later deemed too dangerous to publish. Yet when French police questioned him, he denied being in Paris at the time and provided receipts placing him 170 miles away in the town of Lignières. The conflicting accounts only deepen the mystery. While the truth about Diana's death may never fully come to light, her life remains a source of both inspiration and heartbreak. Far from the fairy tale image often associated with royalty, Diana's story was marked by struggles. Starting in childhood, her niece, Lady Kitty Spencer, has shared that Diana endured a painfully lonely upbringing. Despite growing up on a grand countryside estate with a title and wealth, Diana's early years were anything but easy. When she was just 6, her mother left the family for another man, leaving Diana and her siblings to navigate life without her. Diana's legacy is a reminder of her humanity, her resilience, and her enduring impact on the world, even amidst the unanswered questions surrounding her death. As a little girl, Diana thought her mom was just away on a vacation. Her brother, Charles Spencer, remembers how she'd sit by the doorstep waiting for her to come back, but her mom never returned, leaving Diana's family life in shambles. Her father, the Earl of Spencer, fell into a deep depression, leaving nannies to raise the children. Diana often talked about how lonely she felt, once saying her 20 stuffed animals became her family. When she got married, it seemed like the ultimate fairy tale ending, a prince, a castle, and a life filled with love. But for Diana, it was far from a dream. She famously referred to herself as the virgin sacrificial lamb to her husband, then Prince Charles. The reality? They had only met about 12 times before getting married, just 12. It's a chilling thought, but it was her life. Diana's first encounter with Charles was when she was just 16 and he was 29. At the time, he was actually dating her older sister. By the time someone decided Diana was a good match for him, she was swept into a whirlwind romance. Reflecting on those early days, Diana once said, "The next minute, he leapt on me practically. It was strange, but I had nothing to go by because I'd never had a boyfriend." By the time she was 19, Diana was suddenly under the harsh spotlight of the public eye. The British tabloids became obsessed with her, tracking her every move while she worked part-time as a teacher in London. "It took a long time to understand why people were so interested in me," she said in a 1995 BBC interview. "But then you see yourself as a good product that sits on a shelf and sells well, and people make a lot of money out of you." The constant press attention was overwhelming. Diana eventually learned how to manage the tabloids, but it was never a life she wanted. According to the Washington Post, Diana was left to navigate the intense media scrutiny and the pressures of royal life on her own. Despite the public's fascination with her, she was left isolated and unsupported in her role. Making matters worse, Diana had to learn the strict rules and protocols of the royal family with little to no help. In the same BBC interview, she shared how the royal family simply left her to figure it out for herself, making an already lonely and overwhelming situation even harder to handle. For Diana, the fairy tale was never real. It was just a story others told about her while she struggled behind the scenes. Diana's life as a royal wasn't just isolating, it was relentless. "You couldn't sit around feeling sorry for yourself," she once said. "You had to either sink or swim, and you had to learn that very fast." One of her biggest wake-up calls came during her first royal tour of Australia. "We had a 6-week tour, and by the time we flew back from New Zealand, I was a different person," Diana reflected. "I realized the sense of duty, the level of intensity, and the demanding role I now found myself in. It was a lot to take on, especially since Charles wasn't much help." Diana was still a teenager when she and Charles became a couple. On top of being constantly hounded by cameras, her sense of self-worth started to crumble. In the lead-up to their wedding, Diana's struggles with food became severe. Her weight plummeted as she developed bulimia, a disorder tied to the intense loneliness she felt and the cracks already forming in her relationship with Charles. Speaking candidly in a BBC interview, Diana shared how the emotional pain became unbearable. "When no one listens to you, or you feel no one's listening, all sorts of things start to happen," she said. She explained that her inner turmoil drove her to make her pain visible. "You have so much pain inside yourself that you try to hurt yourself on the outside because you want help, but it's the wrong help you're asking for." Sadly, those around her misunderstood her struggles, often dismissing them as attention-seeking. In reality, Diana was desperate for a way to cope. "Like myself," she admitted, "I was ashamed because I couldn't handle the pressure." What began as a royal dream for Diana and Charles quickly turned into a nightmare. At first glance, marrying a prince might seem like a fairy tale come true, but behind the polished public image, their marriage was far from ideal. They were simply two people who had very little in common. Karen Mooney, a former royal household employee and relationship expert, later revealed the marriage was doomed from the start. There was little connection between them, and with everything else going on, it just couldn't work for Diana. What looked like a glamorous life on the outside was a constant battle behind closed doors, one she often had to fight alone. Diana's fairy tale marriage to Charles lost its shine fast, and her relationship with the royal family was complicated from the start. To the public, Diana was the heart of the monarchy, a relatable yet regal figure who connected people to the royals in a way no one else could. She embodied everything people hoped the monarchy could be, making her tragic death even harder to bear. In the 27 years since, her legacy has only grown stronger, especially with her sons William and Harry now among the most prominent faces of the royal family. But when Diana died, something felt deeply off about how the royal family reacted, or didn't react. There was no statement, no visible emotion, just silence. And that silence stung. While the world grieved, the monarchy seemed indifferent. The lack of response triggered a wave of criticism, making it feel like the royals were detached from the immense sense of loss felt by so many. If there was ever a time the monarchy clashed with public sentiment, it was during those tense, quiet days after her passing. Why did they react this way? The truth is, Diana's relationship with the royal family had been rocky long before her divorce. Her ability to draw massive public attention often outshone the Queen herself, which some believe didn't sit well within the family. While it's all speculation, there's no denying Diana wasn't exactly their favorite. Another reason for their frosty attitude might have been Diana's independence streak. She wasn't afraid to stand her ground, which didn't always fit with the royal family's rigid traditions. Even at her wedding, Diana made a bold but subtle statement by leaving out a single word from her vows, a word royal women had always included. It was a small but telling act of defiance, showing the world she was ready to do things her way, even in a role that demanded conformity. Diana's willingness to break from tradition and be unapologetically herself set her apart, but it also set her at odds with the very institution she represented. And while the royal family may have struggled to embrace her, the world loved her all the more for it. Diana was no stranger to breaking royal traditions, and her wedding vows were one of the first signs she would do things her way. Traditionally, royal brides vowed to obey their husbands, as Queen Elizabeth had done with wording like "I name take you name to be my husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to obey, till death do us part according to God's holy law." But Diana decided to change things up. Instead of promising to obey, she pledged to love, comfort, honor, and stay with Charles in sickness and in health. At the time, it was a bold move and a controversial one. Defying the Queen in such a symbolic way was unheard of, especially since royal brides like Sarah Ferguson and Sophie Rhys-Jones had stuck to tradition. Fast forward to today, and Diana's influence is undeniable. Both Kate Middleton and Meghan Markle followed her lead, leaving obey out of their vows too, proving how her choices shaped modern royal weddings. Diana didn't stop at wedding traditions, she also redefined how a royal could connect with people. While the Queen is famously known for her gloves and hats, Diana ditched them. She believed gloves got in the way of personal connections, preferring to shake hands or hold hands directly. Hats? She left those behind too, saying, "You can't cuddle a child in a hat." These seemingly small choices made her feel more approachable and human. One of Diana's biggest breaks with royal protocol, though, was giving birth in a hospital. It might seem normal now, but for the royals, it was revolutionary. Until 1977, royal babies were born at home, often with high-profile witnesses like the Archbishop of Canterbury or even the Home Secretary to ensure the legitimacy of heirs. Even Queen Elizabeth gave birth to all 4 of her children at Buckingham Palace. Diana, however, decided to deliver both William and Harry in a hospital, away from the traditions of home births and official observers. This shift marked a more modern, personal approach to royal motherhood, setting a new precedent for future generations. Diana's choices may have stirred the waters in the royal household, but they also showed the world her commitment to staying true to herself, whether in her vows, her style, or how she raised her family. By the time Queen Victoria's grandson's wife, Queen Mary, had her first child, the future Edward VII, traditions around royal births had started to loosen. Victoria herself insisted that only the Home Secretary needed to be present, a far cry from the crowded birthing rooms of her own era. That more streamlined approach carried on into the 20th century, including the birth of Queen Elizabeth II. Fast forward to Princess Diana, and she completely transformed how royal births were viewed. She opted to give birth to both Prince William and Prince Harry at St. Mary's Hospital in London, making history as the first royal to step away from home births. Diana even started the now beloved tradition of presenting her newborns to the public outside the hospital. Prince William and Kate Middleton have since carried on this practice, delighting fans with each of their children's debuts outside the Lindo wing. Diana wasn't just admired for her royal status or her impeccable fashion sense, she was loved because of her genuine compassion. She had a remarkable ability to connect with people from all walks of life, whether they were dignitaries or struggling individuals. Her son, Prince William, put it best in the HBO documentary Diana, Our Mother, Her Life and Legacy. She always understood there was real life outside of palace walls. This understanding was evident in her support of more than 100 causes. Diana didn't just lend her name to charities, she showed up and made people feel seen. One example was her dedication to helping the homeless. She often sat down and talked with homeless people in London, showing her deep commitment to their struggles. During a speech for the charity Centre Point, she declared, "Every young person deserves a proper start in life," calling on society to support those without family safety nets. Perhaps one of her most groundbreaking moments came in 1987, during a time when AIDS was both misunderstood and heavily stigmatized. Diana visited London's Middlesex Hospital. She shook hands with an AIDS patient without wearing gloves. That single act sent shockwaves around the world, breaking the misconception that HIV could be spread through touch. It was a simple yet powerful gesture that showed her courage and compassion in tackling social taboos. Diana's actions weren't just symbolic, they carried real weight. She broke down walls of fear and ignorance, inspiring a global conversation about HIV/AIDS and challenging how people viewed both the disease and those affected by it. Diana's tireless advocacy, especially in areas like AIDS and landmine awareness, forever changed public perception and provided much-needed hope for those affected by these issues. Her courageous actions not only raised awareness but also helped destigmatize HIV/AIDS, providing comfort to those who had been ostracized. She didn't just speak out, she immersed herself in the causes, spending time with patients and giving them a sense of dignity and care that was often denied to them by society. Her efforts raised millions for AIDS and cancer charities, making a lasting impact on the health sector. Her son Prince Harry has continued to carry on her advocacy work, particularly in the realm of HIV awareness. In 2016, he took an HIV test live on Facebook, promoting the importance of testing and normalizing conversations about the disease. Harry's action echoed his mother's approach to breaking down barriers and tackling taboos head-on. Like Diana, he has visited AIDS clinics around the world, demonstrating the same compassion and commitment she showed throughout her life. Another of Diana's defining contributions was her work with landmine victims. In 1997, she famously walked through a live minefield in Angola, bringing international attention to the dangers of landmines, which continued to harm civilians long after wars had ended. Her advocacy in this area was bold, especially for a royal, and it helped catalyze the global movement to ban landmines. Just months after her death, the Ottawa Treaty was signed, prohibiting the use of anti-personnel landmines. Prince Harry has since taken up this cause, continuing to push for landmine clearance, reinforcing how deeply his mother's work has shaped his own humanitarian efforts. Diana's compassion also extended to child bereavement, a cause she personally connected with after the pain she experienced in her own life. She founded Child Bereavement UK, a charity that provides vital support for children and families coping with the loss of a loved one. Her ability to empathize with others' suffering and transform that into action remains a cornerstone of her enduring legacy, one that continues to inspire both her sons and people around the world. Trevor Rees-Jones, the sole survivor of the tragic car accident that killed Princess Diana, shares a haunting connection to that fateful night. His survival amidst the loss of Diana and her companion Dodi Fayed reflects the cruel randomness of fate. Diana's death, which shocked the world, solidified her status as a global icon of compassion, strength, and grace. Diana's legacy, however, extends far beyond her tragic passing. As a mother and philanthropist, she left an indelible mark on the world through her tireless charity work. Her influence lives on through her sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, who continue her humanitarian work, particularly in areas like mental health, children's well-being, and homelessness. The causes she championed, including Child Bereavement UK, the Diana Award, and the Centre for Victims of Leprosy, are ongoing testaments to her commitment to making a difference. Her unique ability to connect with people from all walks of life set Diana apart, and her empathy for the marginalized and forgotten sparked widespread social change. Whether it was her pioneering work with AIDS patients, her groundbreaking visit to a live minefield in Angola to raise awareness about landmines, or her advocacy for homeless youth, Diana used her position to challenge societal norms and fight for the most vulnerable. Diana also broke royal protocol to make a tangible difference. From her compassionate work with AIDS patients to her commitment to helping children grieve, her influence, especially through her personal, hands-on approach to charity, has inspired both her family and others across the globe. The Diana Award, Child Bereavement UK, and other organizations she helped shape carry on her mission, ensuring that her legacy of empathy, compassion, and courage continues to inspire generations. Despite her death, Diana's work remains as powerful today as ever. Until now, the truth about that tragic night has been hidden. But Trevor Rees-Jones, the only person who survived the car crash that claimed Princess Diana's life, is finally ready to share what really happened. His revelation is nothing short of shocking. In a candid interview with CNN, Trevor opened up about the moments leading up to the crash and what he witnessed in those final hours. He revealed that during Princess Diana and Dodi Fayed's 10-day trip, there was a growing concern among the security team. According to Trevor, Dodi had failed to properly communicate his plans, including something as small as swimming off the yacht. This lack of coordination raised alarms with the security team, eventually being flagged to Dodi's father, Mohammed Al-Fayed. The tension was building up, setting the stage for the tragic events to come. In the courtroom, Trevor's words filled the air as he recalled the chaotic moments in the tunnel, the flashing lights, the car losing control, and his desperate efforts to save Diana. He described rushing her to the hospital only to later realize that she had passed away. His raw account sheds light on those final moments, offering a perspective that many had long sought. Princess Diana was beloved by millions around the world, known for her compassion, grace, and commitment to helping others. Her 1981 wedding to Prince Charles captured the attention of the world and symbolized a new chapter for the British royal family. Diana, famously known as the People's Princess, was a natural at connecting with people, and she poured her heart into causes like banning landmines and fighting HIV/AIDS. Despite her deep personal struggles in the 1990s, her separation and divorce from Prince Charles in 1996, Diana remained resilient and continued her charitable work. Her death in 1997 left an unfillable void, but her legacy lives on in the many lives she touched and the causes she championed. In the summer of 1997, Princess Diana's relationship with Dodi Fayed, the son of Egyptian billionaire Mohammed Al-Fayed, became public. Dodi, a film producer with a reputation for his lavish lifestyle and Hollywood connections, seemed to bring Diana a sense of happiness at a time when she needed it most. Unfortunately, their time together was tragically short-lived. Diana and Dodi spent 10 wonderful days aboard a yacht in the Mediterranean, and they were deeply in love. After their Mediterranean getaway, they flew from Sardinia to Paris on August 30, 1997. Diana was excited to return the following day to reunite with her sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, who were returning from their summer vacation in Scotland. On the evening of August 31, 1997, Diana and Dodi returned to the Ritz Hotel in Paris after their time on the French Riviera. They arrived around 3 p.m., and after a brief stop at Villa Windsor, a home owned by Mohammed Al-Fayed, they checked into the luxurious Ritz Hotel, also owned by the Fayed family. Diana took some time to call her sons and catch up with them, while Dodi went to a jewelry store to buy a gift for Diana. Meanwhile, the paparazzi were already gathering outside the hotel, eager to capture every moment. The couple had originally planned to dine at the renowned Parisian bistro, Chez Benoit, at 9:30 p.m., but the aggressive paparazzi outside the Ritz made it impossible to enjoy a quiet meal. As a result, they opted for dinner at the hotel's Lomé restaurant. However, the restaurant was too. The only survivor of the crash was awake and aware. He had been wearing a seat belt, which likely contributed to his survival. However, his face was severely damaged with numerous broken bones. Dr. Luc Chan, a French surgeon, worked tirelessly to reconstruct Trevor's face using old family photos as a reference. It took around 50 pieces of titanium to hold the bones together and restore the natural shape of his face. Despite the severity of his injuries, Rhys-Jones spent over a month in the hospital receiving medical treatment funded by his employer, Mohammed Al-Fayed, and the British National Health Service. A false rumor spread that Rhys-Jones had lost his tongue, but this was untrue. He underwent a lengthy surgery to repair his jaw, and when he returned to the UK on October 3, 1997, he could only communicate by whispering and writing. The long road to recovery wasn't easy, and by May 19, 1998, Rhys-Jones decided to resign from his bodyguard position. However, Al-Fayed offered him his job back should he choose to return. In the years following the crash, experts, including Dr. Maurice Lippitt, a psychiatrist, testified to the Metropolitan Police investigation about Rhys-Jones's fragmented recollection of the events. Dr. Lippitt explained that Trevor's memories were limited and unreliable. While he remembered getting into the Mercedes and the car driving off, the events after that were a blur. He could recall a few fragmented details, but he couldn't differentiate between actual memories and those shaped by external sources, such as information he was given later or even dreams. This revelation cast doubt on whether Trevor would ever recover any new or concrete details about that fateful night. As the world watched, Trevor Rhys-Jones faced the difficult task of recovering from his physical and emotional injuries. He underwent numerous surgeries and faced many challenges during his lengthy recovery process, all while the tragic car crash remained a defining moment in his life. The media frenzy surrounding Trevor Rhys-Jones after the crash was intense. Reporters and theorists tried to fill in the gaps of his memory with endless speculation, crafting narratives around his lost recollection of that night. Despite the pressure, Trevor remained quiet and dignified, seeking peace in a world obsessed with every detail of the tragic event. His memory loss, while a shield that protected him from reliving the nightmare, also became a burden. It kept him from finding closure and from answering the lingering questions that continued to swirl around the crash. However, not everyone was convinced that memory loss was the full story. Mohammed Al-Fayed's father openly disagreed with the official conclusion about Trevor's memory. Al-Fayed believed that Trevor knew exactly what had happened before the car entered the tunnel, and he accused him of hiding crucial details. Al-Fayed even claimed that Trevor had been bribed to fake his memory loss, suggesting a cover-up orchestrated by MI6, the British intelligence agency, under royal influence. In 1998, Trevor resigned from his job with Al-Fayed following legal advice, but the drama didn't end there. Al-Fayed pushed Trevor to recall the events of that fateful night, and in 2000, Trevor wrote a book about his experience. Al-Fayed didn't hold back in calling it a tissue of lies, accusing the British security services of writing it to back the official story of the crash. Despite these sensational claims, Operation Cadet, a formal investigation conducted in 2004, found no evidence that Trevor had recovered any memories or that the security services had any role in his book. As the years went on, Al-Fayed's accusations became even more startling. He alleged that Princess Diana had been pregnant with Dodi's child and was planning to marry him. He claimed that the royal family, particularly Prince Philip and Prince Charles, opposed this marriage because Dodi was Muslim. Al-Fayed's theory suggested that this opposition led to a conspiracy to murder Diana. In 2008, he took these accusations to court during an inquest, naming several supposed conspirators, including Prince Philip, Prince Charles, and even former Prime Minister Tony Blair. He also included Diana's sister Sarah McCorquodale, former Metropolitan Police Commissioners, and the CIA in his list of alleged conspirators. While the royal family never publicly responded to Al-Fayed's accusations, they clearly had no interest in engaging with his dramatic claims. His theories, though widely discussed, were not taken seriously by the public or authorities, and they remain a part of the conspiracy lore surrounding Diana's death. Princess Diana's embalming sparked more conspiracy theories, particularly surrounding her possible pregnancy and engagement to Dodi. Al-Fayed, Richard Beller, a conspiracy theorist, found it suspicious and even illegal that Diana was embalmed before the autopsy was conducted, as it made it impossible to test her blood for pregnancy. However, the Operation Cadet investigation dispelled these claims. They tested blood from the car and found no signs of pregnancy, confirming that while pregnancy hormones can sometimes be detected in older blood samples, none were found in the stains from the crash scene. The tragic and sudden death of Princess Diana has fueled many conspiracy theories that still persist today. People have sought to make sense of the event by pointing to perceived clues, coincidences, and assigning blame. Some theories suggest that the royal family or British authorities were responsible for Diana's death, citing suspicions such as the delayed ambulance response, the rapid clearance of the tunnel, and malfunctioning surveillance cameras. Others claim that Princess Diana predicted her own death, pointing to a letter she allegedly wrote to her butler Paul Burrell, as well as warnings from her spiritual advisor about tampered brakes. However, investigations, including Operation Padette, have found no credible evidence to support these claims. In a famous 1995 BBC interview with Martin Bashir, Diana expressed feelings of being threatened by the royal household, but again, these unsettling statements don't substantiate the conspiracy theories. Despite the lack of supporting evidence, many still believe Diana's death was not an accident. One of the more persistent theories involves the driver of the car, Henri Paul. Some conspiracy theorists claim he was involved in the assassination of Princess Diana and Dodi Fayed, which allegedly tied back to Dodi's father, Mohammed al-Fayed. There were even claims that Paul was an informant for MI6, the British intelligence agency. Richard Tomlinson, a former MI6 officer, claimed to have seen Paul's file, alleging that he was an informant. Tomlinson also raised questions about Paul's activities the night of the crash, claiming he went missing for 2 to 3 hours, adding to the intrigue. Tomlinson revealed that despite Paul's relatively modest salary of $35,000 per year, he had nearly $250,000 in his bank account at the time of his death, along with a significant amount of cash on his person. These elements, ranging from Diana's predicted death to the mysterious circumstances surrounding Henri Paul, have only served to fuel the widespread speculation and conspiracy theories that continue to surround the events of that fateful night. Tomlinson speculated that the large sum of money found in Henri Paul's bank account came from MI6, suggesting that Paul had been paid to carry out an assassination. "I am certain that this money originated from MI6, Tomlinson told a French judge in 1998. "This is speculation on my part, but if he was an MI6 informant, it would be quite normal for him to receive money." However, the Operation Padette investigation found no evidence to support this theory. They determined that the money found in Paul's bank account and on his person was unlikely to have originated from any national security service. There was no sign of an attempt to conceal the money, nor did Paul appear to have the opportunity to carry out any covert instructions in exchange for the funds. Additionally, Paul's financial situation could be explained by his stable employment and property ownership, with a reported wealth of around 1.7 million French francs, approximately $17,000 or $340,000 at the time of his death. Another key element in the conspiracy theories involves the driver of a white Fiat that was reportedly following Diana's Mercedes into the tunnel. Some believe that the Fiat had lightly brushed against the Mercedes, suggesting that its driver might have been involved in the crash. Some conspiracy theorists even pointed the finger at James Ananson, a French paparazzo who was rumored to be an informant for MI6. However, Ananson denied any involvement, stating that he was at home with his wife when the crash occurred. In 2000, Ananson was found dead in his car, and police ruled it a suicide. Yet some, including Mohammed al-Fayed, believe that Ananson was murdered to silence him about his alleged role in the assassination. Additionally, a witness, François Lestrat, who was driving through the tunnel ahead of Diana's car, reported seeing a bright flash of light just before the crash. This sparked the flash before the crash theory. Tomlinson, the former MI6 agent, claimed to have seen a similar flashing strobe light during his training, which was sometimes used to disorient drivers in covert assassination attempts. However, Lestrat's wife contradicted his testimony, and the Operation Padette investigation found no evidence that a flash had occurred. According to the French investigation, Paul had been driving at high speed while under the influence of alcohol and prescription drugs, which was ultimately determined to be the cause of the crash. Despite the French investigation's conclusions, these theories continue to circulate, adding fuel to the conspiracy fire surrounding Princess Diana's tragic death. Trevor Rees-Jones also agreed with the findings that placed the blame for the crash solely on Henri Paul. At the time, Rees-Jones was the deputy head of security at the Ritz Paris and had been known to taunt paparazzi waiting outside the hotel for Diana and Dodi Fayed. The investigation revealed that Paul had traces of antidepressants and an anticholinergic drug in his blood, which may have worsened his intoxication. In addition to that, a British jury at an inquest concluded that the crash was an unlawful killing caused by grossly negligent driving by Paul, along with the aggressive pursuit by paparazzi vehicles. Although some reports suggested that Rees-Jones survived the crash because he was wearing a seatbelt, further investigations, including Operation Padette, revealed that none of the car's occupants were wearing seatbelts at the time of the crash. Amid the conspiracy theories and speculations surrounding her death, the world had to come to terms with the tragic loss of Princess Diana. On September 1, 1997, the news broke that Diana, the People's Princess, had died in a car accident in Paris alongside her boyfriend Dodi Al-Fayed. The world was left in shock and sorrow. People everywhere remembered her kindness, her compassion, and her extensive humanitarian work, particularly in advocating for landmine victims and raising awareness about AIDS. The royal family expressed their deep sorrow at her passing. Queen Elizabeth II, along with other senior royals, mourned her death. Prince Charles woke his sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, to break the devastating news. The royal family's website was temporarily taken down and replaced with a somber black background featuring a picture of Diana and her birth and death dates. A book of condolence was set up for the public to express their tributes. Condolences poured in from around the globe. British Prime Minister Tony Blair expressed profound grief, calling Diana the People's Princess. U.S. President Bill Clinton, along with First Lady Hillary Clinton, also expressed their sorrow. United Nations Secretary-General Kofi Annan referred to her death as a loss of a passionate advocate for suffering children. German Chancellor Helmut Kohl described Diana as a victim of the relentless media scrutiny she faced. In London, people gathered outside Kensington Palace, where Diana had lived with her sons, to honor her memory. Thousands of people gathered outside Kensington Palace, leaving behind flowers, candles, handwritten notes, and teddy bears in a spontaneous tribute to Princess Diana. The gates of the palace became a temporary shrine, and mourners waited for hours to sign the Book of Condolence at St. James's Palace. The media, which had relentlessly pursued Diana's every move during her life, now turned its focus to her tragic death. The scrutiny was overwhelming, with every detail of the accident and her final hours examined, analyzed, and replayed over and over again. The role of the paparazzi, whose relentless pursuit of Diana in her final moments contributed to the crash, sparked a global conversation about the ethics of journalism and the sensationalism of tabloid culture. The British monarchy, long criticized for its reserved approach, found itself in the spotlight with the public expecting a response that reflected the nation's grief. This moment created tension within the royal establishment and challenged the very foundation of royal protocol and public perception. In response, the royal family released a message expressing that Prince Charles, Prince William, and Prince Harry were drawing strength from the public support and were deeply moved by the outpouring of love. The British flag at Buckingham Palace was lowered to half-mast as a mark of respect for Diana. Across the UK, churches, mosques, synagogues, and temples opened their doors for people to pray and mourn. Plans were made for a funeral that would both honor Diana's life and strike a balance between royal traditions and the public's desire to say goodbye. Diana's death was felt globally. In San Francisco, around 14,000 people marched in a procession on September 5 to honor her and her advocacy for AIDS patients. In Los Angeles, an AIDS organization held a memorial service, transforming a baseball field into a candlelit altar. In Paris, where the crash occurred, thousands paid tribute by leaving flowers, candles, and messages at both the crash site and the hospital where Diana passed away. Mourners also gathered at the Ritz Hotel, where she had been staying, to pay their respects. On the night before the funeral, 300 members of the British community in Paris participated in a commemorative service. Diana's legacy of humanitarian work, particularly in raising awareness about landmines, was also honored by survivors in Angola and Bosnia, where landmine victims held their own memorials. A powerful reminder of her efforts to bring attention to the devastation caused by landmines in these war-torn regions, the impact of Princess Diana's death was deeply felt around the world. In Egypt, the homeland of her partner Dodi Fayed, people visited the British Embassy in Cairo to pay their respects and sign the Book of Condolences. On September 6, the day of her funeral, an estimated 3 million people lined the streets of London to bid farewell. The funeral procession, which made its way from Kensington Palace to Westminster Abbey, was watched by millions worldwide. At the service, Sir Elton John performed a poignant version of Candle in the Wind, rewritten in Diana's memory. Her brother, Earl Spencer, delivered a powerful eulogy, praising Diana's spirit while criticizing the media and the royal establishment for their role in her life and death. The funeral was broadcast to an estimated 2.5 billion people globally, and the image of Princes William and Harry, young and stoic, walking behind their mother's coffin became one of the most enduring symbols of sorrow.